¿Cómo están? I'm Jenny. Thanks for watching Doing Life with Jenny. If you haven't watched my video about me getting proposed to in the Walmart parking lot and getting married, you'll want to watch that first before watching this one about me getting divorced. Stay tuned. Before we get into the reasons why we got divorced, I do want to preface this by saying he is an amazing guy, very caring, hardworking, super intelligent. We are still good friends. He works with my mom, so I don't want to just be like, this is a video of me bashing him. That's not it at all. I'm definitely at fault too. So I'll give you like during the marriage, what problems we had, and then like the final straw too. So I was 20 when we got married and he was 21. As we learned in the other video, we hadn't even been dating a whole year when we got married. So I'm sure that played some factor into it. Not that people can't, know and make it work, just didn't work out for us. I was still in college, so it was just a stressful time altogether. He also had to go live in Mexico, which is where he is from, for a year during the marriage. And that was at the beginning of the marriage, so I feel like we lost out on building like a good foundation at the beginning as a result. One of the first issues that I noticed and that kept reoccurring was just feeling like I was the only one in, not the relationship, but like in the team rather, because we both worked full-time jobs, but I was the one that got to cook and clean and pay the bills while he, lounged around on the couch watching TV all the time. There was some resentment for that, and I just felt like, we're married, this needs to be a team, we are equals, we do things together, we split the tasks, however we should have arranged it, but it needs to be together, not just one person doing all the work. And kind of along those lines, I felt like I was the only one putting work into making the relationship function. From my perspective, it felt like after we dated and got engaged and married, he had already won me. So in maybe his eyes, he didn't have to do anything else, just sit back and relax and not do anything to like keep me around or keep me happy. And as we all know, that makes no sense. You have to keep feeding into the relationship, building each other up, sitting down, having conversations, what can we do to improve ourselves, help each other be happy. That just wasn't happening. One of my flaws in the relationship was being selfish. I don't know if it's because just I didn't have many friends or if I was jealous or what the case was, but he liked to go and visit the family that he does have in the US very regularly, maybe every weekend or every other weekend. And at the time, they lived kind of far away, I think an hour and a half or 2 hours away. And he would always ask me to go, and I just wanted no part in that. One, because I don't know if at this time I was still working on my undergrad, I had gone back to start working on my master's, but I was just genuinely a very busy person at that time, and I didn't have, a few hours to drive there, hang out all day, a few hours to come back in the evening. Otherwise, maybe I would have been a little bit more willing to go and hang out with his family, but kind of looking back, I just wasn't interested anyway, and I used schooling as an excuse to not have to go, and I realized that was an error on my part. Towards the end of the marriage, or maybe right after the divorce, I realized that maybe I never fell in love with him, but rather with speaking Spanish with him and getting to know more about Mexico, because I'm obsessed with Mexico. And I just loved going to visit his family in Mexico. And I can see how this is exciting and this is new as far as the language and culture. And I mistook that for having a connection with him as a person and not just a connection with where he was from, if that makes any sense. At that time in my life, I was the kind of person that was like, it's my way or the highway, I run the show here. That being said, I can't recall specifically other things that I did to make it not work, but I know generally speaking that I was not the type to say, hey, we'll call him Jorge again like we did in the last video. Hey Jorge, I'm sorry, I was wrong, I'm going to work on this. It was like, you're going to fix whatever needs to be fixed because I'm not the problem. Jorge is from a very small town in Mexico, and I'm going to be generalizing here, but for many people, small town means very traditional, and he definitely had that mindset of the woman should be cooking and cleaning. That's their responsibility. So I already hinted at the beginning of this video that it was an issue, but I want to give a more specific example. He did not like my cooking skills, and I'll be the first to admit that I have zero, but I thought I was trying. I thought that making spaghetti by boiling some pasta and opening a can of ragu sauce, I thought I was cooking a meal. Like, we weren't going out to eat. I put it on the stove, I served it, but for him, that wasn't. For him, cooking was making everything from scratch because that's what he was used to. And yes, my mom and my grandparents cooked meals growing up, but part of cooking in my culture was just opening the pasta and sauce sometimes, and that was cooking. Yeah, there were things that were more elaborate, but that was perfectly acceptable given my culture and the way I grew up. So that was always a point of argument too. Also, he wasn't physically abusive, not at all, but maybe emotionally or verbally abusive at times. Not anything too crazy, but just like when we would argue, he would say very mean things. It wasn't just like, I'm right, you're wrong, just the words that he called me or the way in which he interacted with me just was not appropriate. Like, I had never seen that at home or from other couples that were role models to me. So in him treating me like that, I started to treat him like that, and that's just a no-win situation when both people are just bashing each other instead of trying to work together to find a solution. So at some point near the end, I found a book to try and get us some help. I do not recall the title. I'll try to think of it. If I do, I'll put it in the description box. But it was basically like learning for me to shut my mouth and not react in the moment, but still show him I care by saying things or doing things for him. He did notice that something was different about me and that I was trying, but a relationship can only work if two people are involved and both willing to put in the work. And since it was still feeling one-sided, it just couldn't go anywhere from there. I did also suggest that we go to marriage counseling, and he just would not have that. Didn't even hear me out, oh yeah, it could be a good idea, just shut it down. So I do want to throw it out that I put that on the table as well, but we never followed through with it. Then there were two things that were kind of the final straw for me. One was I had a little work done on my toenail, and I had to change the bandage regularly and soak my foot in some salt water or something of that nature. And one time upon changing the bandage, I was feeling a little queasy and lightheaded, and I knew I was going to pass out, so I yelled for him to come, and I yelled his name a couple times, and he just could not be bothered to see why I was feeling sick or why I felt like I was going to pass out. So, of course, that's why your partner's there. Something's wrong, they're there to go through it with you, to hold your hand, even if they can't fix it, at least, come see what the matter is. And the second one was kind of similar. I was really sick one day and literally over the toilet puking, and he walks by and he just yells, "Get out of the bathroom, you're not even sick," as the vomit is coming out of my mouth. Why anybody would be like that, I'm not sure. There had to be something else going on, that maybe he was taking it out on me, but that was just not acceptable. And just all of these things piling up on each other, happening for 7 years now, nothing is changing. I had just had enough. I'm like, I am not happy, and there's time to do something about it. Because I did grow up in the type of environment where marriage is for life. You're going to make it work. but I was 20 at the time of getting married, so that's puts me at 27 then. Like, I still have my whole life ahead of me. I can't do this forever. I feel so unhappy. I feel drained. So I said, it's time to call it quits. So we did go together to my parents' house to break them the news. We were all crying. The next day, my mom brought a whole stack of books on relationships, and I said, Mom, it's too late. So it was hard on my parents too. For me, the divorce itself wasn't hard. It was mostly the fact that I had to tell my parents, and I felt like I was disappointing them. And also because I'm a very driven person, very goal-oriented, very like, I'm gonna make this happen. And with a relationship, as I mentioned, it takes two people to make it work. And I can't control him. And the fact that like something broke that was out of my control, that could have been prevented had the other person done their part of the responsibility, it just got at me. Also the part that got at me was just feeling alone after the divorce. Like, even if you weren't interacting as a couple, or I don't know how to word it, but the person was still there when you got home. There was still some kind of support there when you got home, and going from having someone there all day, every day, to, hey, I'm gonna go home and have dinner alone. That was very difficult for me. I think it was right before we really seriously brought up the divorce. I had just decided, he's not doing his thing. I'm not going to let that prevent me from living my life. So I really started getting involved in salsa dancing, and I started being happy outside of the relationship. And I think it's so, so true that when people say you have to be happy yourself before you can be happy in a relationship, maybe that was part of the issue too, that I wasn't happy on my own. And finally, I found that. So definitely after the divorce, my coworkers noticed a huge improvement in my personality, my mood. Like, I was just happy, loving life, and it just felt so great to finally feel free. So I want to leave you with this. Like, if you're in your relationship, I would say try to work it out. Okay? Remember why you got together in the first place. But it has to be both people working. It can't be, oh, you're the problem, I'm the problem. You have to work together. Get help. But if that isn't happening, if somebody's being abusive, you're not getting your needs met after having sat down and made sure it was clear that your needs weren't being met and you gave them the chance to improve, it's not worth the pain. It's not worth the frustration to put yourself through that for the rest of your life. So do try to make it work, but also do what you have to do to take care of yourself too. Okay? Hopefully the next video will be a little happier. Okay? Adios.